We were talking earlier about the stock market now and how everything seems to be crashing, and that the economy that was left for him, a very, very solid economy that was left for Donald Trump, is now being crashed. And there's a lot of speculation as to why. Why are we doing this? Why are we it seems to me like we are manufacturing a crash, and we are doing this on purpose. One philosophy that I had thought of, that I hear other people saying, that we are crashing the economy on purpose so that way these ultra rich people can buy stocks at lower prices. He can pretend like he's going to implement these tariffs, and then the next day says, you know what, we're not going to do it. Stock market goes back up. Then a month later, a couple of weeks later, he says, you know what? We're doing 50% tariffs on Canada now on steel and aluminum, and the stock market tanks. And then he comes back and goes, you know what? We're going to do 25%, not 50. So we'll see how the market opens tomorrow, because apparently that's what he did right before I came on, is that he announced he's going to do 25% tariffs instead of 50% tariffs. And this is a game that he is playing, not with the multi-billionaires. The multi-billionaires will not care about this because they understand that they are always going to get their money back. But you have people that right now are retired or who are close to retiring, and it is tanking their 401ks or their retirement accounts. And he does not care about these people. This is basically the tone and the warning that we have been giving people all throughout Donald Trump's tenure of either running for president or becoming president or now winning again, is that he does not care about you. He cares about the ultra wealthy and taking care of them, because those are the ones that are taking care of him. Outside of that, he doesn't give a shit about you. That's why he says dumb shit that is screwing with your head as to why it's better for you to vote for him, like immigration and trans stuff and nonsense like this that doesn't even really exist. And I'm not getting into this immigration thing. I'm not saying immigration is not an issue. We've talked about this a million times on the show. Of course it's an issue, but not in the way they're making it sound like it's the issue. And that's why people are voting for it. I hear it all the time. I voted for immigration because I want our country to be safer. There's absolutely no indication. There are no statistics that show our country is significantly or even partially unsafer because of immigrants coming into this country, whether they're documented or undocumented. There's none, but people believe it because it is ingrained in them. It is told to them every single day from the right-wing propaganda media that boosts this up without any hesitation and without any shame whatsoever. They do not care about lying to the American public so they can become more powerful and have people like a Donald Trump and Elon Musk running in this country. But anyway, I'm going to go backwards a little bit here. There was a clip where Maria Bartiromo was talking about Donald Trump and talking about the tariffs and what we're doing and why this is a good idea. But in real time, as she's talking, you could see that the stock market, the Dow Jones, is dropping 100 points in real time. Take a look at this, but I also want you to listen to Maria's words.
President Trump is looking from 30,000 feet above. He expects a disruption. He said,
this is another thing I am really sick of. They'll do it. I know they'll do it, but I need everybody else that knows better to stop acting like Donald Trump is some brilliant numbers guy, some brilliant businessman who understands this better than anybody else in the world, and that we're so oblivious to his greatness that he is taking care of us. We just don't see it yet, even though there's not an economic expert that would tell you this is a great idea. Target, Walmart, Delta, all of these companies, major companies, are now looking at their books and saying, we need to expect way less profits coming up, at least in this next quarter or the quarter after. And they have concerns. Donald Trump is a fucking idiot. He always has been his entire life. He's been a terrible businessman, has never done anything successful on his own ever. The only time he ever made money was help from other people. When his father passed away, when Mark Brunette gave him The Apprentice, and then when he became president, he basically grifted and made tens of millions of dollars as president by using his name and making his security, paying money at his hotels. They had to stay at his hotels and they had to pay their own money. The Secret Service is who I was talking about. This guy's been a grifter his whole life, but this idea that he's some genius businessman, that has got to be combated outside of the Fox News propaganda bubble.
That the other day, sure, we'll have a disruption, but we're okay with that. And I asked him that in the interview as well. What other disruptions might he expect? I think it's largely companies and investors getting used to a new day, a new sheriff in town, and that includes ensuring that America comes first. So, yes, we are talking about tariffs, and if you listen to the people who are against tariffs, including the Wall Street Journal editorial board, they'll say, well,
economic experts, the Wall Street Journal editorial board. There's not an economic expert who says this is a good thing. If you look at everybody that looked at the differences between Kamala Harris's economic plan and Donald Trump's economic plan, almost all of the people who looked at Donald Trump's economic plan said that it could cause a recession, that the tariffs are not a good thing. They are a bad thing. And you have somebody like Maria Bartiromo on Fox News who does, again, another one of these grifters who doesn't give a fuck about the stupid viewers that are watching her show, psyching them up into saying what he's doing is great. I might have to take a little bit of I might have to suffer some pain for a little bit, but I'll do it all for America and America first and all this stupid bullshit that they're shoving down your throat that just is not true. And yeah, I will come back. Anybody that says, will you come back in a year or so when everything is unbelievably great and we're making millions and millions of dollars? Will you come back and say you're wrong? Sure, I'll say you're wrong. But in that same year, you come back to me and say, hey, in 2026, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that the Democrats win the House and the Senate and that we never vote for any of these grifters ever again in my lifetime. I'll make that deal with you.
Cost is passed on to the consumer. But President Trump's pushback on that is just what you heard, that he is luring huge investments into America, and the rest of his agenda is deflationary. Remember, you can't just look at tariffs in a vacuum.
First of all, deflation is not a good thing. Deflation means prices are going down and they're cutting prices. And I know that sounds great, but they're cutting prices because people can't afford to purchase anything anymore. And they're trying to stimulate the market to get people to buy again because they have no jobs. They've had their pay cut. They've had their Social Security cut. They've had their retirement funds cut. They can't afford anything anymore. That's what causes deflation. That's not a good thing.
He's also hoping to extend the tax cut, so cutting taxes. He's also tapping into the energy capacity in America that he is expecting to produce growth. And he's also getting wealth back to America, meaning he's already had commitments of $2 trillion from large, deep-pocketed investors to corporations to invest in America. President Trump's message was very clear to me when I sat down with him last week, and that is build it here. And the point that I made on Laura last night that you referenced, Bill, is the fact that things have changed quite a bit in the world. It is a dangerous world out there. And President Trump's main priority is to protect America. And what I mean by that is there are things that Americans rely on that are made in a supply chain in adversaries' countries. So when you look at, for example, semiconductor chips.
By the way, are you paying attention to the Dow Jones, how it just continues to drop?
Advanced semiconductor chips, which are very much needed for our military, for drones and advanced technology, those chips are made in Taiwan. Now, if we're all talking about China and Taiwan, and should China go into Taiwan and take over, I mean, they'll be able to.
Yeah, I'm glad she mentioned the semiconductors because there was something in the Biden administration called the Chips and Science Act that started taking those chips and everything that were made in Taiwan and now brought them over to our country and made them here because Biden was thinking America first too. So here's the problem. Biden left Donald Trump a phenomenal economy. And everything that was happening in the economy was everything that most economic experts would say, we are back on the right track. This is where we need to be. Interest rates were going to drop naturally. Now they're going to drop manufactured. What that means is the Federal Reserve was already dropping interest rates because inflation was going down. And that's what we wanted to do. As a mortgage loan officer, we wanted a natural decline in rates because the economy was getting better and getting back to normal. So the Federal Reserve had announced that they had cut rates this last year, and had Kamala Harris won and we continued with those policies, we would have continued to cut the interest rates and interest rates would have continued to fall. But now Donald Trump and Elon Musk and whoever the hell it is in this administration wants to manufacture a recession. And they want to do this to reduce the interest rates, which is a bizarre way to do it. The first time Donald Trump was president, I remember a lot of people were saying, man, the economy was great under Donald Trump. That's why I voted for him again. The only reason why the economy was great during Donald Trump is because he took over a phenomenal economy that was already on the uprise, and he did literally almost nothing. If he had done the same thing here, we would have gotten back to a regular, normal economy without causing people pain in their retirement accounts, without causing job losses, without causing the economic chaos that we are seeing now. We could have done it naturally, but now he's telling us, at least I'm going to get interest rates down, but it's going to take years from us to recover from a recession if one in fact hits. And most people, including major corporations, believe that we are heading towards, at least at the very bad recession. So if we hit this bad recession, it's going to take us a very long time to recover. But had he had just stayed with the economy that we were on and did exactly what he did when he took over after Obama, then we could have naturally got back to a very strong economy, because we had a very strong economy under Joe Biden. Once we got through the pandemic that really hurt the economy, that started under Donald Trump and then carried over into Joe Biden's presidency, we had an inflation rate as high as 9.1% in 2022. But during Joe Biden's presidency, not only did he create the most jobs in the history of any president, in 15 out of 16 quarters, the GDP growth was in the positive. And he also ended his presidency with 11 straight quarters of GDP growth. So we wanted to continue that. We want to continue that in our economy. However, now it's projected that our GDP growth could be in the negative after the first quarter. So with all these economic numbers, Joe Biden, 15 out of 16 quarters of having positive economic and GDP growth. When you have the unemployment rate was under 4% for 2 straight years at one stretch that hadn't been done in 50 years, and had been hovering around 4% basically ever since he got those jobs back from the pandemic. With the pandemic jobs that were lost, he got those back, but added another 14, 15 million jobs on top of that. He also continued to have a thriving economy despite all of the things that happen worldwide and across the entire world. Inflation there's a lot of countries that are still hurting from the pandemic. We have the #1 economy in the world, and we could have kept this going. But no, a lot of people in this country, for some reason, just couldn't vote for a black woman. And don't tell me that that's not the case. I literally heard somebody, I've heard a few people say, they couldn't vote for a woman. And I heard another person say black woman. I know that exists. And in my life, if I've heard at least 2 people say it, I know everybody else has heard at least 2 people say it. And that's why we have idiots like Donald Trump and Elon Musk running our country right now. But as I said, I wanted to work backwards a little bit. Donald Trump was asked on an airplane, why did he hesitate when he was asked about a recession on Maria Bartiromo's show? And this is what he had to say.
Where are we? Are we just about? We're just about ready to land.
Are you worried about a recession? Maria Bartiromo asked you, and you kind of hesitated.
I'll tell you what. Of course you hesitate. Who knows?
First of all, the reporter said, Maria Bartiromo asked you about a recession and you kind of hesitated. His response was, of course she hesitated. This guy's a fucking idiot, guys. Like a complete moron. He has no idea how to answer any questions. Everything that comes out of his mouth is filler. That's it. It is nothing of intelligence. There's nothing thought out about this guy, but he just keeps rambling, and these reporters just let him answer these questions and then move on to the next one. And he knows this. So he knows he can he could just say anything out of his mouth and people don't question it. And then when they do, he says, where are you from? Oh, of course you're from CBS. And then just ignores them and says, next question. And, again, this is where the media's got to get better, where they say it outside of his presence. Because in his presence, you're right, there's just nothing you can do, because he'll run right over you. And then if you say something that counters what he has to say or questions him, he's just going to run right over you, move over to the next person. You're not going to be able to follow up. And then you may not be allowed back into the reporting pool here where you're even allowed to ask questions.
All I know is this. We're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch. We're going to have jobs. We're going to have open factories. It's going to be great, and the plane is landing. And thank you for a lot of good questions, okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, of course he's got to go. Goodbye. I suckered you guys enough. I said my filler, stupid answers, and there's nothing you can do or say about it. You can't question me. You can't do any of that stuff. And I am going to continue to sucker millions of Americans. Now, the problem is maybe for him, and I've gotten to the point now where I'm just kind of like, I don't know, maybe he could just get away with it for the rest of his life, because he's been able to do that. Nobody's been able to stop this nonsense. So I'm not really sure why we're going to see it stop now. The only thing that you can see now is you have seen some of these town halls in red districts where they're getting pissed off and they are saying, yeah, this is not what we voted for, that they are angry about Elon Musk. There is, even if you have to use Elon Musk as a fall guy and you have to get angry at him, if they're angry at this administration and people are starting to get pissed off and they're starting to wake up, that could be a good thing. Will we see the ultimate culmination of people waking up and saying we made a big mistake? Because it's very hard for people that are in a cult to admit that they made a mistake. To say anything against the dear leader would be sacrilegious. You cannot do that. And this isn't even something that they're wrestling with. They know that he is the leader. Everything that he says is true. So to even question it doesn't come into their brains. However, there are some people that voted for Donald Trump that are not part of the cult necessarily. They just fell for the nonsense that they heard on podcasts and they heard constantly on Fox News and people they read on X all day. And I can't believe I called it X. I refuse to call it X. That might be the first time I called it X. It's Twitter. I'm never calling it X. But what they read on Twitter, and maybe they're waking up. And you really don't need that many people to wake up, although you want to see as many people as possible, because as we've pointed out before, Kamala Harris lost the election, but she didn't lose in the landslide that, again, most people think that she did, because a lot of people just don't pay attention. They just hear it, see the red colored in on the map, and go, oh my God, she got blown out. I don't even know why she ran. She lost by the third lowest popular vote total, percentage-wise, the third lowest in American history since 1900. And if you even include the 1800s, I think it's the fifth or sixth lowest popular vote total percentage of all time. So she barely lost. There's 3 states that if you would have split the vote 50 to 120,000 votes in each state, she would have won the election. So you're hoping that the people who got suckered, and you are seeing enough people online to say that I made a big mistake. You see a lot of people that voted for Donald Trump in the farming industry, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But there are a lot, and the people who work for the government that are not happy. And hopefully it's enough to where it literally affects them, because I've at least said a lot of times that people are voting against their own interests and they just don't know it, but they're voting for it and it hasn't hit them yet. And that's why they continue to do it. But when it finally hits them, then they make the decision as to what's more important. The guy who trolls liberals and gets me angry about things that really aren't happening nowhere close on the scale of what they're trying to make me think happens. And maybe I should start paying more attention to the people who tried to warn me. Or should I start thinking more about my own interests and not thinking about how cool it is to troll liberals on things that liberals really, at the end of the day, aren't saying or doing anywhere near the scale that the right-wing propaganda has made people think that they have.